Hey everyone, this is Chris Raycamp with the UMKC Innovation Center's Technology Venture Studio. Today I'm joined by a suite of experts on product design, project design, user scoping and journeying, technical product scoping, all kinds of fun things, because at the Tech Venture Studio, we work with many early stage technology and tech entrepreneurs to build that first product and to bring their visions to life. And as such, we'd love to have these conversations about critical junctures in the journey of bringing those visions to the market, and just really excited to be joined today by the suite of folks that have deep expertise in doing just that. So I will ask folks just to give a really quick high level hey, how are you? This is my name and what I do. And we'll go through some questions about the best practices, the pitfalls, and what to do and what not to do when you're bringing a new product to market. Tyler, please say hello.
Hello, I'm Tyler Hilker, Crema's VP of Strategy. Crema is a small design consultancy based here in Kansas City, and we specialize in a lot of B2B, really complex internal operations type software. And my focus in particular is on research, strategy, background in UX and design.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And
thanks, Chris. I'm Ann Culpepper, CEO of Illumisoft, small custom software agency with a focus on healthcare and biologics innovation.
Awesome. Josh.
Thanks, Chris. It's a honor to be here and a privilege. Josh Wexler. I'm been doing a lot of product stuff and executive product stuff for a long time. Sorry, I just in a mood today. No, but in all seriousness, I've built and launched many different products on the B2B side and B2C side.
Excited to have you. Thank you, Josh. Charlotte.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte. I do product strategy and product development work with early stage founders, usually non-technical, and also work within the Technology Venture Studio.
Absolutely. So I'm going to frame kind of one context that we work closely with entrepreneurs is our Digital Sandbox grants. So folks come to the Tech Venture Studio to get $20,000 in funding to build their first to bring their vision to market, to build that first MVP, and get hopefully great feedback. So a lot of times what we see there is that a founder has done some research, they have a background in a certain industry, they have a vision for this platform or this product, and really starting from square one. So in terms of build, in terms of leveraging technology to bring that to market. And we push really hard on what are we testing in the marketplace to ensure that that $20,000 really helps you understand the problem you're solving, the user journey, and hopefully build a business around that vision, right? And leverage that learning to build scalable tech and to build a business. So thinking about that really early stage of I have a vision, but I've not yet leveraged technology to do that. Talk a little bit, if you can, we just go down the line, or whoever wants to jump in, about what is critical at that juncture to consider in terms of your defining that first test. What are the pieces that go into that? How do you, how do you not boil the ocean when you have this enormous vision and this problem that you know is real? What's critical there? And feel free to jump in, anybody that has elicited a reaction for you.
The first thing that comes to mind, this came up with an entrepreneur that we were talking with last week, is it's so easy to jump to how to make the solution that I have in mind, whatever that is, how to take advantage of this insight, this idea that I have. And so that's where we tend to start our investigations. I find it more effective in the long run, even though it's really frustrating to slow down like this, but to work backwards from that insight and say, to make sure that you're asking the right question. So even before you start doing research to go deep and get a better sense of how you might build this out, how users might interact with it, that kind of thing, work backwards to say, again, making sure that you're answering the right question. And that can look like, instead of saying, how do we build this thing? Or what is the right price point? Should this be a mobile app or a website, something like that? That's, again, those are all very concrete answers that we want to go for. But really, you might want to ask a question like, instead of all users, who is our actual user and what do they need out of it? What is the specific pain point that they have? How strong is that pain point? Is it a 9 on a scale of 10, or is it a 2? Do they tend to have disposable income to pay for this kind of thing? Can they write it off at work? That kind of thing. So what is the right question? And then you can, but that takes research to get there too. And so there's kind of a chicken and egg back and forth question. But when you find that right question, that's when the research starts to make a whole lot more sense.
So I have a specific term for what you're talking about, Tyler, that is solution sickness. People get literally sick with their own solutions. I do it all the time. Like, I think I got this product. I'm like, oh, it's going to be so great. It's going to have this feature and this feature and this feature. And guess what I'm not doing? Any of the stuff Tyler just said, which is exactly what I should be doing, right? I should be asking myself, to me, there's like 3 key questions, right? What is this insight that I think I actually have about the world, right? The second one is, who actually cares, right? Is this actually a valuable insight? That's not a business. It's a valuable insight, right? Anne was talking about this before we started filming about, how do you know that this pain is actually what people have, right? And I think about, oftentimes there's needs and then there's wants, right? And with people, needs, the way I think about them is they can be subconscious or even unconscious, but you see it, right? Like, that this person needs this. Then there's the wants, right? Which are typically more on the conscious level for people. So I think a lot about, not only is this thing valuable, but really, does it actually attack the right need and or want set that people can actually understand, right? I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs where they're like, oh, well, this is the insight, and they're going to see it eventually. I'm like, yes, that might be true, but in product world, we call that an educational sale. And that is not a world you want to be in, especially in an early stage, because education takes a long time for your market. And only really after those things can you start to ask questions around, is this actually going to work as a transaction? And then what is actually needed from a solution perspective. But I've been there many, many times. I fall into it all the time. I get very sick with my own solutions, and I have to go to a solution doctor to get, this analogy is breaking down, but I got to get help basically to help me pull out of that. That's also where good advisors come into play.
I like that. I mean, I think we're kind of in the realm of solution doctoring here, right? Like, this is I like that, that reference point, because yes, we all have the experience, I think, in the world, and we could set aside even Digital Sandbox as like having that great insight and then getting wildfire about all the ways that it can manifest in the world, right? And losing track of who should be at the center, the people you want to impact their lives, and whether or not that is critical for them would later offer you the opportunity to say, well, they might actually let go of some resources and pay me to solve this problem for them. But that's so much further down the line than, is this a valuable insight about the world, right? So I appreciate you helping to frame that, Josh. Anne, I see you come off.
Yeah, I really appreciate what both Josh and Tyler just said. A thing that came to mind for me, very simple, that I think is helpful for people to think about in early stages, is how will I know that I have succeeded? So part of it is defining, what you want to do. And of course, like we've been saying, what you want and what people need is not the same thing. So let's assume that we're in the right spot. Define success criteria. And that can just, even if those shift, just having that trajectory ahead of you can help guide, I think, the process of developing your product in a stable way.
Yeah, I want to build on that because a lot of times when somebody does research, they expect the answer to just materialize and make the decision for them. And the outcome of that research is either yes or no. But you have to go into that research and say, what do you want to get out of this? And sometimes it is, yeah, people like that, or people really hated that. Usually it's something in the middle, and then you get a bunch of stuff that you never asked for that you have to figure out what to do with. And like, oh, the users actually did this thing that it was not in the test or the data that I was looking for, but that's a really interesting insight. Now I have to go deal with that. Do I need to pursue that? Do I need to do this other thing? But research, my point is that research doesn't always provide you with a direct imperative. And so going into that and designing your research for a particular outcome and being open to whatever you get there and then some can be really helpful in knowing when to move and how to move.
I was gonna agree with everyone, but also I think the biggest thing about research is that a lot of founders think that means very much in a very specific subset of like Googling and finding data and all of that. And another part of that research is talking to people, especially people you're expecting and hoping to be customers, because you might be able to research a bunch of things and see a bunch of trends, but being able to like talk to a real person that you're hoping to sell this solution to or use them as a test and some sort of pilot or beta is a whole different animal. And I think that's sometimes where it moves from, I'm going to build this product, I'm going to show it to people and they're going to love it, to this person has asked me, when is it done and when can they start to pay for it? And sometimes that like switch of urgency then makes the clarity of like, what are you building and what are you presenting to people very soon and stressful. And then that's kind of where you kind of can help narrow down what are you building and what needs to be in there and what do you want to be in there, versus a lot of maybe the like higher level research around people and making assumptions and having hypotheses about what they want is really hard to kind of nail down, especially when you're trying to execute and build something with some expectation that people are then going to use it.
I think, Charlotte, you're dead on, and it's a really good point. An hour of a structured conversation with a potential customer or another person is worth 800 hours of Googling, if you ask me. But notice how I said structured, right? It's not just a open-ended conversation. There's a lot of great work out there and a lot of great software tools that now help you to conduct these interviews in really good and methodical ways. I'm not going to say, Tetra Insights, because obviously I'd be biased, but that is what Tetra Insights does. There's also Dovetail, there's Condense, there's these other tools out there that provide a lot of great free resources to understanding how to do what you just talked about, Charlotte. So I think it's a really important point. Talking to people is, for me, the best use of research time in this context.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One question that I've heard asked, and I've asked it of early stage entrepreneurs, is what is the riskiest assumption you're making about this concept? And how do you identify which assumption is most critical to your future success? To end your point, like, what does success look like? And then what is the kind of foundational assumption that you're making about? And I think that goes back to, is this insight valuable, Josh? But there are, to your point, tools, frameworks that are useful to help narrow the scope of your work initially, right? Because we're, especially in the context of Digital Sandbox, we're limited in resources. And so what does it look like? Either you can speak to frameworks or tools that you might all leverage to do that. But what does it look like to narrow the scope of that initial that initial test? And have you had or found really helpful frameworks to do just that, whether develop yourself or leverage outside frameworks that or tools that do help people do just that?
Yeah, Teresa Torres, I think she came up with it. I know she's popularized it. She wrote a book called Continuous Discovery Habits. And in that book, she talks a lot about this activity called assumptions mapping. And it's taking that question, Chris, what is your riskiest assumption? And blowing it out to say, let's talk about all your assumptions. Because that's a good question, but starting with that question helps us focus on the risk rather than the quantity of assumptions that we're often making. And so it's an exercise where you say, I assume this based on these other insights, these things that I know, or maybe don't know, these things that I think I know, and you can go validate those things that you think you know. And that can you can do that with, like Josh and Charlotte was saying, talking to individuals. Is this actually how your day goes? Do you actually believe this? That kind of thing. But just getting it out on the table, and sometimes having somebody that is not connected to your idea or your reputation. So I would stay away from family members or friends that just kind of acquaintances. But Digital Sandbox is a great example because you're invested in the success of this thing, and that can help you have a different lens on, and maybe a more critical but not harsh eye towards some of these assumptions where you can really challenge those things. Because assumptions, if I give you a list of assumptions and I share those assumptions, and you share those assumptions, then neither of us is going to challenge those things. And so that's an important part of what you were saying before about the diversity of the Digital Sandbox ecosystem and the people that are participating, because coming from different perspectives can break a lot of those assumptions down. Then you can find, oh wow, this is the riskiest one that we have. It wasn't the first one that came to mind, but yeah, there's a big deal. There's a lot of assumptions behind this big one.
So I have two books that I have used extensively. One is called Running Lean, right? It's basically all about the lean canvas, which I found to be really, really valuable. I think you guys teach that. I just come back to that again and again all these years later. The second one is called Validating Product Ideas by a guy named Tomer Sharon. He's really smart fella. And his book's very easy to read, and it's quite helpful, and it really walks through the whole process of doing this. One of the things he says is that all your interviewers or interviewees are lying to you. They don't mean to be lying to you, but they are lying to you, and you need to approach it that way. So, for example, something that you're just saying, don't ask them, have them show you, right? This is what this book is all about, right? Things like that, rather than saying like, would you like it if, because the answer is, I like you, so yes, I would like it. Or I have no reason to say no, so of course I want that, right? So there really is like a true art to running this kind of thinking and validation. And then the other thing I would say is there's as we were talking about with these sort of questions, right? There's like, what do I think is true in these insights, right? The assumption mapping stuff, I think is great for that. And then there's do people actually care about this? And then the third question is, will they actually do or pay for something, right? And I think it's there where there's a lot of possibility for learning a lot with 20K, basically with the grant. That may or may not have to do with building solutions, because getting people to pay, as we're seeing now with many, many startups that are really struggling, turns out to be very important to your future success. Do people care enough to pay?
Absolutely. Appreciate that. I'm going to do one more rapid fire rounds. We're coming out of the half-hour mark here. Going back to that kind of initial context, we have an entrepreneur, fantastic vision, background. They've been granted $20,000. They're on the edge of this new precipice of creation. Final word of encouragement or a hard don't do this.
I was immediately, I was like, oh, I have it. I think a lot of founders, when they do have the funds, want to go straight to developers and just talk to them and get it built. Because I'm biased, because I'm a product person, I'm like, please talk to a product manager, a product owner, someone who has product strategy experience, because they will basically pull out of you everything you haven't thought of, that very likely a developer won't ask you until contract is signed and they're starting to build it. And so that would be like my one piece of advice.
I think I'll throw in that my advice, like I mentioned earlier, is asking yourself before you begin whether you're solving an immediate need or whether you're validating a certain market with your initial funding, and then just setting your expectations in line whichever one you land on.
I'll share that what I didn't know back when I've tried to do my own things was what a deep skill set this idea of validating ideas actually is. And so my advice would be to go find people like the people on this call and people you've all made available via UMKC and the great work you're all doing there to help out, help guide, because there really are, I mean, what Tyler said, for example, I know is hard-won experience from years of doing it wrong or seeing things go dead wrong. I mean, same for me. It's like, what? Why did this happen? And then you look back, you're like, oh, right. I guess I didn't ask that question at all. And while I'm not trying to tell you just listen to whatever Tyler says, I mean, I do think that's good advice. But regardless, what I am saying is there really are people out there that have been through this, that have done it multiple times, and they can really help guide you from where you're at to where you need to be next in terms of this skill set. But just recognize that it is actually a skill set and it can take years to develop and get good at. This is also why venture capitalists love repeat entrepreneurs typically, right? Because they know that they've really honed this skill set of validation in place.
Yeah, for me, it is know what matters, because there's a lot of distractions when you are building a product. The biggest one is that you think you're building a product and you're actually building a business. And in a lot of ways, the software is, people are going to hate me for saying this, but that's kind of the easy part, because I can tell anybody to build anything, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be sustainable in the long term. It's going to be the right thing. Or even that it's going to be what I want it to be, what it is in my head. And so that's a lot of the research that we're talking about, is identifying what matters to me as a future business owner, what's going to matter to my design and development team when I finally find one, and what matters to the people that are going to be using and paying for whatever it is I'm building. And there's a lot of things to distract. And so if you don't know what matters going into this, or if you're not open to discovering more of what matters, then everything is going to look like it matters exactly the same. And you're going to go through the grant, your energy, and whatever other funds you find along the way really, really quickly, because you're just spread way too thin.
I like that punchline. Know what matters. Thank you all for your time. Folks, check out umkcinnovates.com, digitalsandboxkc.com. Check these folks' profiles out. They're all over there and they're experts. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
It
Chris.
was fun.